Yellow. What's going on, everyone? Today we're back with part 2, Ultimate Sports Rehab Expert series. Part 1 we talked about human complexity and the chunking method. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to check it out. We went over why homeostasis is important, and that's going to be relevant to this talk. We talked about how homeostasis is needed and it's going to play a role in development, and it can impact a human being in a positive or negative way. And change to homeostasis is needed in order to cause adaptation, but you can also go too far and create injury as well. So injury is when load is greater than the tissue capacity. So there's 3 effects we as professionals can have on our athletes, our orthopedics, our population that we treat. And some of the things that we have a very good or very positive influence on are the ability to change or make more robust is cardiac output and resistance to fatigue, strength, and movement variability, movement options. So those are kind of the 3 things that you can look to influence the most as rehab professionals, as strength coaches, to make your athletes more resilient, more robust, resistant to injury. So also when we're talking about recovering from an injury, these factors become very important too, because ultimately they're going to be pushing the envelope in making positive adaptations to homeostasis. So these 3 factors, cardiac output or resistance to fatigue, strength, movement variability, you're going to be able to identify through your assessment process when you look at all these different systems and how they're interacting, which one is going to need the most adaptation and going to cause the most change for your client in a positive way. Through your assessment, you can also find which do you feel you could change the quickest, because that's going to also influence your decision as to what to attack first, especially depending on what setting you're working on. So if you're in the rehab setting, obviously we want to make changes as quick as possible to the athletes, to the clients. So what do you think you can make the quickest change, fastest change, and start having impact for your clients? Now there's always going to be a point of diminishing returns with these three factors, just like anything, and depending on the lifespan or how late in the career the athlete is, which characteristic you're going to be emphasizing the most is going to change as well too. So that's where a needs analysis comes in, that's where your assessment comes in, and what you have to decide where you're going to put your time in when you're training these individuals. So we know that good training looks a lot like rehab and performance. They all kind of look similar, and they should look similar too on some point and scale. You shouldn't just necessarily have your rehab exercises, you shouldn't just necessarily have your performance exercises, and I think most of us understand that to some point, but really all those 3 things should coincide, and it's done on a continuum. There's no set rehab, there's no set training, there's no set performance. This should be done on a continuum, and really they should look very, very similar, just done on different levels depending on where the athlete is at that point in time. So again, most programs are going to contain in some way, shape, or form a squat, a lunge, a hip hinge, carry, vertical press, horizontal press, vertical pull, horizontal pull. So those are kind of your foundational movement patterns. You should be training them to some capacity in every program. Now, which ones you emphasize is going to vary depending on the needs of the athlete or the individual, and if they're in a rehab setting, what they're purposely seeing you for, but ultimately that's what you're going to try to be getting them back into for performance. So those are your major movements. Now, again, they should look similar in the rehab realm, they should look similar in the performance realm, but ultimately you're going to be influencing the same thing. So knowing these factors, it simply isn't enough. You need to be able to recognize how to manipulate all 8 of these foundational movement patterns, and that's going to be essential for your program development at any stage, rehab, performance, or just fitness. You need to be able to know how to elicit a sensation that changes perception, which is neurological. It's going to be a fairly quick change to be expected. That's a little bit more on the rehab side of things. But then after that, it's influencing motor learning and skill development, which is a mid to longer term type goals. Has to do with movement variability that we talked about earlier, and then creating strength and work capacity, which were the other two factors that we had talked about early. So knowing how to pick and choose your exercises appropriately for your athletes, for your clients at any level, at any point of the continuum, rehab, fitness, or performance, is essential in developing an optimal training or rehab program for your clients.